Thanks for checking out this movie review video. This is for the 1986 film Dead End Drive-In. And this is one that I own. It's an Ozploitation film. And the reason I had purchased it without ever having seen the film is that, first of all, it's an Arrow video release, and usually they do really good stuff. Also, I got the book about the life and career of Brian Trenchard-Smith, who's the director who did this film, and this sounded super fun, and I wanted to just go ahead and, while I read the book, which I've stalled on because reading the details of someone's life, how they grew up, can be very boring, so I need to get back into it, though, and get to the, film stuff. But this film is not as great as I wanted it to be honest. Had I seen this film before buying it, I probably wouldn't have bought it. That said, it is fun enough. I do think it's worth watching at least once. But look at that artwork. It's pretty great artwork for the film. Just a lot of nice colors in there. But yeah, Dead End Drive-In. So let's go ahead and talk about that. Like I said, Brian Trenchard-Smith is the one who directed it. I also have a review on my channel for his film Turkey Shoot, which that one is a lot of fun. I like Turkey Shoot more. And funny enough, they actually have scenes from Turkey Shoot playing in this film when they're at the Dead End Drive-In. So I thought that was kind of cool. He's also done Night of the Creeps. Oh, sorry, not Night of the Creeps. Night of the Demons 2, Leprechaun 3, and Leprechaun 4 in Space. This film was written by Peter Smalley, who also wrote scripts for In Malopolis and Emma's War. And the story came from one Peter Carey, who worked on scripts for Bliss and Until the End of the World. This is reportedly, well, first of all, Quentin Tarantino, apparently his favorite director is Brian Trenchard-Smith. And reportedly, Dead End Drive-In is Quentin Tarantino's favorite Brian Trenchard-Smith film. So you could say that potentially, based off that logic, this film is one of Quentin Tarantino's favorite films, supposedly. Apparently, Trenchard-Smith had an idea for a sequel in mind for this film, but since it actually financially flopped, which I can see why, it's a very meandering film, it was never made. But he had an idea for it, so that counts for something, right? And the actual drive-in that was used for the shooting location in this film was actually one that Trenchard-Smith and his father went to when he was young. So I think that's really, really cool. I also think it's great that they used an actual drive-in. So for someone like me, I love the drive-in ambiance. I go to the drive-in here and there, which, by the way, what is on here? I don't know. Anyway, I go to the drive-in every now and then around me, Benji's Drive-In, which has been around for a long, long time, many, many, many decades. Awesome place. And that's kind of like a very zen place for me, honestly. I love it. I love the drive-in. So whenever it's represented or shown in a film, I love that even more. It's kind of like my affinity for films that have sleepy seaside towns. It's very kind of similar to that. So love it. The rapid text that's being shown in the very beginning of the film really serves to set the environment for the film story-wise, and it's a really quick kind of smart way to get that done. You don't have to show a bunch of stuff in the beginning. You don't need a film montage like they actually did in Turkey Shoot to kind of show this dystopian society that's going on. They just give you a bunch of facts about events that happen, and it immediately gives you the idea, okay, dystopian, got it. Now getting into the film and moving on. But that would lead you to believe that the pacing of this is going to be a lot better than what it ends up being, and would also lead you to believe that it would be more trimmed and more to the point with a lot of stuff and have more action. There was a lot of potential with this in that realm, but they really just kind of ended up meandering a lot. And it's like once they got to the actual drive-in, the Star Drive-In, it's like they just wanted to show all the daily life stuff without it being that interesting, unfortunately. There are some interesting things here and there, but I think if the film was cut down a bunch, it would have worked a lot better, in my opinion. The orange color to everything in the very beginning of this film is super cool, and I kind of wonder if that was meant to show a certain level of pollution there. I don't know for sure, and there was they messed around with reds and oranges within it. I don't know if it was just a palette choice just for the sake of, maybe the time of day, or like I said, if it had to do with showing kind of pollution, because in the beginning they do make sure to show a lot of industrial areas, which would give you the idea of, it being more polluted, and everything looks dirty and grimy for the most part. I love the junk car mayhem that they start with. It's wild and it lets you know how out of control society is. It also gives you a very Mad Max kind of vibe, which I wish they would have gone harder on and done more of that type of stuff. Now that said, the it is wonderful in the beginning, and then unfortunately, once they get to the drive-in, things really kind of backpedal. I wanted more of that craziness. I wanted more of people like going after each other in these junk cars, and a lot more of like the societal mayhem and all that stuff. Which, by the way, there are some really crazy looking stunts in this having to do with the cars. It looks like it was probably a really dangerous set for that reason. So hopefully nobody got injured during the making of it, because if you watch some of those scenes of like people like jumping on and off cars, it looks like it's one take and it's not like cut, so it's safer. So I was like watching it and kind of like cringing, being like, oh, these stunt guys, like so close to getting run over a few times. The comparison of the character of Jimmy to Frank sets the expectations low for who Jimmy is, and for that reason, you know he's going to end up being a hero, because this is the whole underdog story, which has been very popular in film for a long, 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 long time. So when they're just like, oh, like literally his mother is like, oh, you know, you're not big and strong and so manly like Frank. You're much smaller and smarter, and you know, you're just a different person. So that whole thing so early on just gives you the idea that he's more meek, that he'll have to overcome a lot if he's in a tougher situation, but he overcomes it, he gets tougher, and he's a hero by the end. It's a real money over people statement when Frank and the other tow truck driver are fighting over towing the cars in the wreck, because of the fact that there are literally dead people or dying people hanging out of the cars while they're standing there haggling with the police saying, oh no, I'm the one who got here first. I'm claiming these cars to take care of, to actually tow and get the business for. Like, they're so focused on the money and business aspect of it that the fact that people are like dying in front of them, they're just kind of like, it doesn't really matter. And you get the idea that with how that scene is done, that that's just very commonplace in this society. So just showing you further that this society doesn't really care about people a whole lot. And you see that further when you find everything out about the actual drive-in, where it's literally people just being kept there, like with no determined end in sight. The crash scene is like a circus. You have the police who show up. You have the tow truck drivers haggling over who got there first. You have the priest show up randomly when everything's real crazy. You have the news crew show up eventually. And you have the car boys there, who they call the car boys, which are like these junk car hooligans who show up and are just like trying to fight, which I didn't even understand why. Maybe they're trying to claim the cars before the tow truck drivers can get it. I don't know, because all the cars that they were driving around looked like they've been beat up anyway, so I don't know. But that's just a very nutty scene. So I was really hoping that they would capture that energy and use that for like the entirety of the film, and they just did not. I do love how when Jimmy and Carmen get to the drive-in, the movie playing is Turkey Shoot, like I said. Love that. Note that the unhelpful employee at the drive-in has 3 empty beer bottles on his desk. Thompson, that character of Thompson, the guy who at first seems like a very disinterested, unhelpful person, then seems like a pretty helpful person and nice guy to Jimmy. Then we find out that actually he's in cahoots with the government and is actually not a great guy at all. But I thought it was funny when he's first introduced that he doesn't care that Jimmy's tires were stolen. I mean, obviously we find out why, because this is a very commonplace thing. Like, this is what he deals with all the time. And he knows it's all part of the plan. But it was also just funny to me that you see in the background that he's already gone through 3 beers while he's supposed to be working. So I just thought that was kind of funny. I love the shot of the drive-in the next morning, because it looks like a total wasteland. Like, they show Carmen and Jimmy waking up, and then they kind of like pan back, and then they start panning around, and they're showing all of the cars out there, all of these kind of like makeshift encampments and houses and pools that people have built up. Well, you mainly see the pools once Jimmy goes on his run around the perimeter of the drive-in. So I like that aspect of it, of just seeing like how much of a crappy wasteland this place is. So I like that, but like I just need more stuff going on, more action to it. It definitely seems like Jimmy and Carmen won't be leaving. As soon as the fat stack of food vouchers were given to them, this seemed to be a very commonplace situation. Because why else would you give them a ton of food vouchers if your intent wasn't for them to be there forever? I think that literally is the moment it clicked for me. I'm just like, oh yeah, everyone's here for the long haul, and yeah, this is going to be hard for them to get out of here. Thompson is a very calm guy. Calm to the point that you think he's in cahoots with the government to keep people there. I did think that well before they actually introduced that aspect, but I don't think I'm alone in that. I think it was pretty easy to figure out that how he was acting was super suspicious. So I'm sure a lot of people also figured that out. If you were if you were Jimmy, would you tell people that your nickname is Krabs? Because he said it at first, and I'm like, okay, maybe this has to do with something else. And then he literally goes into the story about one time he thought he had crabs, and some people teased him about it, so his nickname is Krabs. Like, you're meeting people who don't know that. You don't need to offer this information and tell them that, and then they start calling you Krabs. Like, you can keep that info to yourself and just have people call you Jimmy, or James, or whatever you prefer. But I guess he prefers Krabs. I don't know. It's funny. After meeting the character of Beth and her crew in the bathroom at the drive-in, Carmen seems pretty much ready to just accept living at the drive-in. And it becomes even more so as it goes on. She doesn't seem to really care that much. Like, she seems to be the person that doesn't have a whole lot going on in her life or a whole lot of aspirations in life. Like, wherever she is, she's just going to accept that that's where she is and that's her life at that point. Obviously, Jimmy is significantly more driven, and he's actually trying to get out. But it really seems like everyone at this drive-in just does not care, and they're just like, okay, nothing we can do. This is where we are. Better make the best of it. And Carmen seems to embrace that too quickly, so I don't think her character is that well written. But, I mean, I think she's just there to, like, show the contrast between how accepting she is of it and how she's just basically giving up, versus how driven Jimmy is. And then I think it's also there to make it a little bit harder for him when he ends up, talking about leaving, and she's just like, I'm actually kind of fine here. And so it's supposed to be a tougher thing for him to make the decision to actually leave. So, yeah, but it ends up not being that big of a deal. Jimmy's jog around the drive-in shows more daily life and what people built to be more comfy at the place. Like I said, I really like that aspect of it, but it is good for just kind of showing you that people have been there for a long time. People have built all these amenities, all these things that they can do now. So it gives you more of like a rich feeling of immersing you into that world, into that environment. We see how inept Jimmy is at fighting during the cricket bat scene. That whole fight with one of Dave's crew members. Yeah, Jimmy wasn't that great. He eventually gets the upper hand when he gets under that car and pops out of the hood, and then hits him with the piece of brick, it looks like, or concrete. But he's fighting dirty at that point. He's not, man-to-man fighting. So, yeah, it just gives you the idea, how he's pretty vulnerable while he's at this drive-in, unfortunately. But he overcomes that, obviously. He thinks, he has a plan. Carmen starts to spout some racist, xenophobic stuff once the truck of people end up showing up. She's falling further and further into the dead-end culture, and obviously they make racism and xenophobia very key to this dead-end drive-in culture that's going on. They have that scene with the meeting where people are talking about these people who showed up when it's kind of like they were shipped there. Like, they didn't even know where they came from. So I'm going to comment a little bit on that at the very end as an overall theme of the film, but just note that it's showing how deep into this drive-in culture Carmen is getting, because she starts to say some of these things that they were saying. And it just goes to show also this idea that, if you live in a place long enough, you start to adopt, some of the culture, some of the sayings, some of the isms that go along with it. Not everyone, but a lot of people. So Thompson is the one distributing the drugs in this drive-in, which serve to keep the people trapped there more docile. That was my understanding when it's shown that he's getting the bricks of heroin from the government, which, let's talk about how crazy that is. That he's accepting bricks of drugs from the government. I assume it was heroin, because that's all I know is being in bricks from what I've seen in movies and TV. But yeah. It was just kind of a funny moment where he's like checking out. He sniffs it, which I thought was funny. But then I was like, well, he's probably just distributing this to keep people calm. If people are getting high and staying calm, they're going to be less likely to try and get out of there. And that's the point of what the government's trying to do with these people. For someone they seem to hate Dave and his crew to do pretty hard. Oh my gosh. Why did I'm sorry. I really messed this up. Dave and his crew try pretty hard to actually get Jimmy to join them, which what I was trying to say in my note is, for the fact that they hate Jimmy so much, they're trying very, very hard to convince him to join them, which I didn't really understand that. I'm like, I guess it's kind of like a either you're with us or against us thing, and even though they didn't like him and picked it on him a lot, they were just kind of like, well, he is a white guy, and there's strength in numbers, and everyone is trapped in this place, so either people are on our side or they're on a separate side. And yeah, maybe he got further spooked when they brought in the truckload of people. I don't know, but it was just kind of a weird thing in my opinion. And the fact that they focused on it to the degree that they did was kind of like, eh. Finally, the action you've been waiting for happens when Jimmy steals the tow truck and the police race after him, indiscriminately shooting him automatic weapons around. I thought that was pretty funny. That is the excitement that they had in the beginning of the film coming back. But you had to wait so long in order for them to get back to it. I really wish they would have at least sprinkled a little bit more of that throughout the film. But I'm going to assume this has to do with a budgetary thing and they couldn't go too hard on that type of stuff. So obviously they want to have the big ending. Big start, big ending. And that's kind of how the film is. It's pretty slow in between. The shotgun blast to the police officer looked good when he's in the standoff, when Jimmy's in the standoff with Thompson, and then he ends up shooting the police officer, and the police officer shoots Thompson. Like, the shotgun blast looked pretty legit and bloody and crazy, so good job on that. But other than that, like, practical effects weren't too great as far as like blood and guts go. I like how Jimmy takes out the drive-in sign with his epic jump at the end, where he like ramps up, takes out the Star Drive-In sign, and gets out of there, and then he's driving to freedom. I kind of felt like there should have been a little bit extra at the end of like him going back home or doing something else or having people come after him. Just like something, but it's just this thing. It's like he gets outside of the drive-in and we're supposed to expect that the government and Thompson and everyone just lets him go. Like, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me, and they just like end it there. It just, there needed to be a bit more, it felt like. I don't know. Fun 80s music in this film. I really did like the 80s music, which obviously it's from that time period, so that's the type of music it's going to have, but I thought it was pretty well done. It is shot well, too. It looks really good. Brian Trenchard-Smith did a nice job with the actual directing, cinematography. It looks really good. It's just the content left me wanting a bunch more. There are a good deal of dangerous-looking stunts. I kind of already talked about that. And then my final statement, I said I was going to go back to like the racist and xenophobic stuff with the characters. This is an extreme mirroring of society where a population of people feel disenfranchised. Therefore, they decide to focus their rage regarding that disenfranchisement at people who immigrate. That is a known thing that ends up happening. That has been used for decades and decades, well, centuries, within countries of distracting people and basically saying, you know, everything that's wrong in your life or everything that could potentially go wrong in your life has to do with these people who are coming into your country. It's that whole thing of other and focusing people on not the task at hand or what's really, you know, causing the disenfranchisement within their life, but a distraction. And that's what's going on here again. And I think that was an intentional mirroring in this film to kind of like call out the fact that this happens. And here, even in this film, in this dystopian society, it's still happening. But if you think about that type of stuff, it is happening all the time in so many countries. Politicians in particular like to use that as a way to distract people. It's something. But anyway, that's everything I have to say about Dead End Drive-In. Would love to hear other people's opinions on this film, especially if you really loved it. Because if you know, as you can tell, I didn't love it or anything. But go ahead and put some comments, love it, hate it, in between. I'm going to rate this 2 ways because this could be considered so bad it's good. But as a regular film, I'm going to give it 2 stars out of 5 stars. Not great, but not terrible. Like I said, it's shot well. It's got good music. There's a solid premise. I like the look of the environment that they created there. You definitely get the feel of the dystopian society, all that stuff. So, just 2 stars. But as a so bad it's good, I could see it at 3 stars. Between 2.5 and 3, but I'm feeling generous. I'll go the 3 for so bad it's good. But anyway, like I said, comments. Do me a quick favor, though. Hit subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Literally, what are you waiting for at this point? You know, it's the best way to thank me for doing this video or any video you've ever enjoyed on my channel. It's quick, it's painless, it costs you nothing. So that would be awesome. It keeps me motivated. Also, hit the notification bell button because then you'll know when I'm putting up all my videos, which I'm doing 4 a week at this point. So regardless, I really do thank you for taking your time to watch this video. And until next time, keep it brutal.